What's up, everybody? Welcome to the RC Dirt Oval podcast. Tonight, a little bit of a different situation. I am running solo for the immediate future. Tim is out racing. Imagine that. Mr. Podium himself is out turning some laps at his Wednesday night showing. So tonight you just get to hear me for a few minutes, and then we'll be joined by a guest. So just to recap a few things, we have a lot of exciting racing coming up. This coming weekend is another stop 3 of the King of Kansas City series. And if you are anywhere near the Kansas City area, you do not want to miss it, because they're also going to be having the DE Pro Mod event as well, and get to see who takes home the money from that. And this one is at Fastlane Raceway. And make sure, seriously, if you're anywhere near Kansas City, do not miss this. Show up and show out. A couple of other real quick things. We do plan on doing several of the Average Joe kind of spotlight series, and those will be coming in the future. They require a bit more prep work than a normal show. So with all that's been going on, just been slowly putting the pieces together to make that happen. So be looking forward to that. Got a lot of other guests lined up, and racing recap and just general mayhem. This week's been a little bit crazy. Had major computer issues when we sat down and recorded this the first time, so we had to skip that. And here we are again. We're going to take a real quick break and see if we can get Mr. Arnie Fie on the line. TQ Bodies Custom RC Products is proud to introduce the Wicked Wing Traxxas Bandit-based sprint conversion in 3 different configurations. Chassis conversion kit is $135. A complete kit, including the Bandit unassembled, for $410, or a complete kit unassembled without the Bandit for $270. If you love Traxxas and you love sprint cars, this is the car for you. You can find them on Facebook at facebook.com/TQ Bodies, and let them know you heard about them on the RC Dirt Oval podcast. Welcome back, everybody, to the RC Dirt Oval podcast. We are joined tonight with none other than, my gosh, Custom Works fame. And for me personally, I think it's very cool that he is a native Delawarean, which is remarkable. I think he's got to be the most famous Delawarean RC racer ever. So that's a pretty impressive title in and of itself. Mr. Arnie Fie, how are you doing, Arnie?
Not bad. How are you doing, Alfie?
Man, I am good. I'm good.
My line when you're away from Delaware is, you can say you've got a 1 in 4,000 chance of meeting somebody from Delaware. So today's your lucky day.
Yeah. Well, you know as well as I do, if you get very far from Delaware, the state, and if you say you're from Delaware, most people will go, Ohio? No, not Delaware, Ohio. Delaware, the state. It exists.
And then when you're in Delaware, as if it wasn't small enough, then even the locals divide it in half by saying, are you from Lower Delaware?
Yep.
Or from Wilmington?
Yep.
And for me, I grew up right on the canal, right on the south side of the canal. So
okay.
I was a border kid.
Yep.
So I went north for school, and I came home to, learn how to race and live in the marsh.
Yep. Yeah. It's funny. I mean, I know we've talked about this before on here, but the southern Delaware, south of the C&D Canal, it's like honorary South. But when you go to the true South, and where are you from? Oh, from Delaware. Oh, you're a Yankee. Oh no, wait a minute, man. We eat cornbread, drink sweet tea,
Well,
yeah.
And truth be told, the Mason-Dixon line goes around Delaware.
Right.
Delaware is not. It was not in the north or the south during that whole episode. So that's also a thing when you move to North Carolina, is you're automatically presumed Yankee.
Yep.
And that was a fast fact I had to teach some friends, despite who I can naturally be sometimes.
Right.
And I was not a Yankee.
Yeah. Well, as we have learned on this show, when we get somebody who's got a rich history, we struggle to get it in. I still feel bad for poor Rob Cutman. I feel we cut him so short because he had so much history. I got to get him back on the show. So, without further ado, let's jump in with how you got started in RC.
I guess we cue the Wayne's World, due to the music at this point.
Yeah.
We go all the way back to either 1988 or 89. And I mean, this is just, there was RC cars before that, but there was no transponder loop involved.
Right.
So that's where it all happens. But the bottom line was I had a Blackfoot. I worked the summer previous to buy this Blackfoot, and if anybody remembers that particular kit, the bevel gears always went. So after I figured out how to cure that by pinning it and all the tips and tricks that you'd read in Car Action to survive ownership of the Blackfoot, I finally got to use it pretty good, and the wire come unsoldered from the battery pack.
Uh-oh.
So, I didn't know that at the time, but bottom line is, at that point in time, the pit stop opened up in Newcastle, Delaware, and and my uncle is basically my dad. My dad's the oldest. My uncle's the youngest of his family, and he was I think he was kind of recruiting me to go, so he had a reason to check it out. He's a single guy at the time, and when he came by the house, he's asked what was going on with my RC car, and I said, well, it's down. And he thought it was the bevel gears, and I said, no, it's actually the wire come off the battery. I don't know, need to fix it, but don't know how.
Right.
And he said he had a soldering iron, and I just looked at him and I went, I was like, the wire's broke. I don't know what this iron's going to do for me, but he's like, no, you'll see how this works. So I'm like, okay. And at that point, I just wanted my battery fixed so I could go back to whatever I was Mr. Miyagiing myself into at those days by doing racing around cones on a driveway or what have you. So he took me back to his house. He broke out the soldering iron. I'm like, wow, metal melts. This is amazing.
Yeah.
So he put the wire back on, and it was whatever time it was, and he said, I think we could make the races. And I was like, hey, you got my battery fixed. Everything's icing on the cake from here on out.
Right.
So, I raced a production class. That basically, they look you head to toe and go, you just brought a new truck? Yep. You know how to race? You just started, you don't know anything about racing? Yep. They go, production class. So it doesn't matter if you brought a hand glider or a Blackfoot
right.
or a pan car. You're in the production class. So, third in the C main. I remember, I remember the night kind of well. I remember sitting under the pit bench during the heats, just watching the races.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my first night of racing. The very next week, I was right back there just as I was. And then I had a birthday in between the second and the third week. And man, the old race program picked up quick. So we ditched the molded body, went to one of his Lexan Ford, F-150 replicas.
Yeah.
Up to some Proline strikers. Got the old Joel Johnson motor in there.
Yeah.
We didn't go for the adjustable pinion.
Okay.
deal. The budget ran short there. I regretted that decision for the next couple weeks.
Right.
Apparently, all motor and no gear means you go about the same speed. So yeah, I mean, I raced every weekend from that point. I'd say for the first, I think it was like 60 weeks, and I forget who in my family's wedding came up, but they were the person that broke the streak, and
wow.
I still hold some animosity today, but you know, I'll learn to forgive.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I was. I would say shot out of a cannon. I remember the transponders were L-shaped at the time.
Wow.
So yeah.
Now this was at Pit Stop.
Yeah, this was at the Pit Stop in Newcastle.
Now where was that located?
So yeah, that's a good question. Part of the Delaware deal is it the Square Mall? Is it the Triangle Mall? It was there at basically Harris Corner, like back by the airport.
Yes. Okay. And so it was in the mall, right?
Yeah, it was like the mall was all but shut down.
Yep.
Lorenzo's Pizza still survives today, from what I understand. They're right next to Troop 9 there.
Okay.
And that was the pizza place. And the whole deal to go race was, you know, as a kid at 10 years old, was you needed a $10 bill. 5 of it was for entry. 3 of it was for a pepperoni roll. $1 got you 2 sodas to get through the day. And I don't know what I did with the other $1. That went into my adjustable pinion gear fund. But, I mean, God, I feel like, I already feel like the old guy right now, like uphill both ways to school. But that was 1988 or 89 in Delaware and starting to race. And Thursday night, Saturday night oval was 100 people plus deep.
Yeah.
And the room was chock full of cigarette smoke and Paragon.
Yep.
And if you didn't have a headache from watching the cars go by, I think everybody was so new. You know, that was one of the biggest things I had. My mom would come home and go, Eureka Paragon, and I'd have a headache, and she'd say, well, no wonder. And I said, no, it's from watching the cars. Like it was a different headache. It was like an eye socket headache.
Right.
And it probably took, it took 6 months before I finally, that whole thing stopped. From watching, basically watching every heat race. I couldn't get enough.
Yep. Wow.
Yeah. So that was. So then let's see. The next migration was the King Cab, because that became like the default. Now truck racing had kind of become official in the area, and to me a King Cab fulfilled everybody's needs, and the Midnight Pumpkins and the Monster Beetles went by the wayside. So now you had 4 suspension arms and oil shocks, and you had a sway bar. You took it off because, it just looked like extra work. You didn't know what it was for. So that was racing. That was racing back then. Did you ever get up that way? I mean,
yeah, I had my aunt lived up just off of the Marsh Road exit off 95. And she was divorced, and so no kids, and so my brother and I would go up there all the time, and we were racing at the beach on a little dirt oval behind a garage, like a gas station garage.
Little Lewis?
Yep. That's where we started, and so we went up there the first time on a Saturday night, and we had Olink Invaders that were some type of like dirt conversion something. They had knobby tires. They looked like RC10 tires, but anyway, and so we switched them over to Bolink foams, and we just ran something. I don't remember what the class was. It was like when we left that dirt track and went to that mall, it was like it was a culture shock almost, because it was so packed and it was so serious. Where in Lewis, it was just everybody sitting on their tailgate having a good time, and so we learned a lot there. But again, we only got to go when we would go up to our aunts, and that, because it was an hour and a half ride, so it wasn't a lot back then. But yeah, I was up there, man, and I mean, as soon as you said the pizza place, I remember it so vividly. It just stands out in my head. Walking by, and the guy's just sitting there tossing pizza. Yeah,
Yep.
it was good stuff.
Yeah.
So, you're on to Tamiya, and where do you go from there?
Well, that to me, a King Cab was the ride. The second ride, the next ride was the RC10 team car come out, and they had the carbon chassis option, and that was definitely the first move where the box was bought and the instruction manual was chucked to the side, because that thing never was a buggy. It comes straight out, had the Dom's truck body stuck right on it.
Yep.
Custom tires from the King Cab right on it. I mean, it was like a midweek transition. Ran the King Cab on Saturday. It was tore apart on Sunday. Tuesday, picked up the kit. Had it all figured out. There was a couple guys at the track that heard he'd done the same thing, so I kind of had the grocery list of what I would need to do. But yeah, it was all about making sure that this truck would make it for the next week's race, because damn it, can't miss a week. I mean, so at the time, Pit Stop was doing 10-week point series, 7 weeks counted, and of course I wasn't missing a week. So I got that truck together and I ran the 10-week series. I went 10. Basically, they gave T-shirts for perfect attendance that said you went 10-0, meaning made every week. But for me, I had won all 10 weeks. Like, that was the goal. So I still have that shirt today. Like, it's folded up. It's in the closet.
Oh my gosh!
Basically, it kind of like beach balls around the rack. But I mean, it literally brings a smile to my face even still today. From that's probably like 1990 or 91.
Yeah.
That was kind of the whole premise when they hung that T-shirt up and said, if you stay all 10 weeks, and I was like, basically, I don't care about being here 10 weeks in a row and win 10 weeks in a row. So, that was my internal challenge. And, I think that's kind of one of the first, I would say, pseudo earned trophies that, I got.
Yeah.
It's like, it hangs. White, and it's thin. I mean, it's cheesecloth thin now. I probably wore it. I was that kid, or then I wore that shirt like religion.
Right, right.
You thought it was tattooed on my body.
Yeah.
But that one never saw the rag pile.
That's awesome.
Too much meaning.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, team car, and then God, I'm digging all the memories out right now. I remember the guy's name, Jimmy Little, let me drive his Bolink LTOSS. The narrow pan cars had just hit. And, man, that was love. I was like, wow, this thing doesn't float down the straightaway. It just goes, and, direct drive. And man, all of a sudden it was straight back to the piggy bank and rolling some change. And, what am I going to do to get the $150 together and make that kit happen? And well, it took a little bit of drive, a little bit of work to get to that kit. The following year, I remember this one really good. Pit Stop moved across the street, and there's an industrial park, because the Square Mall finally was going to fall in on itself.
Right.
So the Bolink LTOSS was no bueno for flat asphalt.
Okay.
And that's what they put inside at the Pit Stop. And the one guy that had a 10L, I remember his name was Gus. I can't remember Gus's last name. I just remember he was the only guy with a 10L at the carpet track. When we moved across the street to the asphalt track, it was like redemption. This guy handed our heads to us, and he sold kits. I mean, it was like the love affair of a Bolink LTOSS ever. Is a racer real loyal? Hell no.
Right.
It was. They dropped these things in a heartbeat, and poor Mike that had the hobby shop, it was like you couldn't even order them fast enough. I need ability. They're basically people, like, well, I ain't coming next week until I get my kit. So, me included, but my first concern was, well, I got to find the money to pay for this. And I used to target shoot. My dad used to trap shoot a lot, and there was also, I don't know if some people are familiar with turkey shooting, which is basically you shoot a card and the amount of shot that lands in a circle, is how much shot you can get into the circle on this like 4x6 card at like 40 yards away.
Right.
Is you're the winner, but it's not. It's basically gambling. You put up $20. Everybody puts up $20 or $5 or whatever the round's going to cost, and you shoot it, and then somebody scores it, and they hand the money out.
Yep.
So, that was part of hanging out with my dad, at the time, and of course, why not hand a gun to a 10-year-old and let him try to shoot too?
Yeah.
And I was fairly decent at it. So he put me in the chair and he gave me way too much gun. I mean, it damn near knocked me off the chair. I remember it vividly. And I won the round. I don't know if they sandbagged it, but I mean, I saw the card and I definitely peppered the paper really good. So I won the round, and of course my dad put the $20 up, and he wanted to give me $20, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that was about a $400 hit.
Yeah.
And he goes, yeah, and I said, you know where my mind's at. He said, well, we'll talk about it. So talk about it meant we'll see what you do for it during the week. So, I kept my chores that I had to do, and by Wednesday time rolled around, he told me, he said, hey, I'm stopping by, I'm going to, pick that kid up. Then we're square, and told me that we're more than square. And
yeah.
And I said, yes, I think that's great. So yeah, that's how I won my 10L.
Nice.
I had to take the shooting budget and put it on the line.
Yeah, you got it though.
Yep. Yeah. So that was, man, that puts us right. Then this is like 92, 93, recession hits, pit stop closes, and luckily driver's license is in hand. So start heading up in the PA and racing. There's Lansdowne right outside of Philly on a Friday night.
Okay.
And Downingtown, they ran Thursday nights and Saturday nights. So really the whole thing was, well, how do you run all three? But it was a little hard to do. So I made Lansdowne on Friday nights in the winter, and that was really, Mom really liked the whole idea of her kid going alone in the South Philly.
Yeah.
To race in her seat,
yeah.
from Delaware. So she had to talk with me. She's like, I don't know what kind of trouble you can get in up there. She says, there's lots of people with problems, and there's drugs in this world. And I looked at her and said, Mom, I could be running drugs with all these boxes. Who would know?
Oh my
And
God.
she just looked at me and goes, you better not be. And I was like, I just looked at her like, I couldn't believe we're having this talk. And I was like, I think I'm pretty sick with racing. I said, that's probably our bigger concern right now. So that was trying my way of trying to put my mom at ease. But no, Downingtown's outside of Philly on Friday nights, and then Lugnut later in the years on Friday nights, and then Downingtown was like a staple on Saturdays, or I think Saturdays or Sundays. And of course, you meet lifelong friends at all these places. I can name people from the pit stop, but one of the good friends I've had over the years, Ricky Steve. I met him at Downingtown and his dad, and man almighty, Peter Cole and Doug Parazano and Joe Downey, and the list goes on and on and on. That was the first, pit stop, I was kind of learning the fundamentals, but Downingtown was the first place that I had to figure out how to break through. Like, you go up there and it was like most anybody could run 37 or 38 laps.
Okay.
But Ricky runs 40.
Right.
These 2 or 3 guys can run 40. And it's like, and then, you befriend, they befriend you and you're sitting right there and it's like the magic trick's done right in front of your face. It's not, there's no Facebook or chat forum to go complain that they're cheating.
Right.
They're doing it right in front of you, and they're willing to help you.
Yep.
And it's like, man, it's like, what am I missing? What do I need to do different? And Ricky's dad, we always just called him Pop, but he never sugarcoated it. He sent it right up the middle. I come back to the pit after a run and I go look at him like, was that better or worse? And it doesn't make a difference. You can't hit the line off the corner. So figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay. You wasted those 4 minutes.
Oh,
my gosh. Watching you try. It was fun watching you try, though.
Wow.
so it was the good, and I appreciated it. God, I loved it. I was like,
right.
It was good, tough love. I can think of another story more recent of, the same kind of spirit that I hold. Maybe I'll just break into the story now, but
yeah.
If Kip Mowry's out there listening, Frank Hanley was a guy from California, and he got ill with cancer, and basically it was like, head down, don't care, still going to live it out.
Right.
And he wanted to race the Chili Bowl, RC race the Chili Bowl, not like midget race,
right?
RC race. And so him and Kip are good friends, and he says to Kip, come run my cars. So Kip comes out to the Chili Bowl, and they're there to race the way Frank sees it, and so's Kip. So, long story short, it's time to practice at sometime during the event, and Kip's nowhere to be found. He's like, Frank's got radio in hand, like looking for Kip. Kip's now taking pictures and politicking and having a good time. Finally, Kip comes back to the pit, and Frank gives them the riot act.
Oh, wow.
He says, what are you doing? It's only perfect, because when I turn around and look, Kip's got the Canon camera around his neck, a soda in one hand and fries in the other. Like he's all about a Disney.
Yeah.
And Kip goes, well, I was around talking and hanging out at the track. And and that's, I'm a racer's racer. I'm not there to politic.
Right.
And Frank, look, I could hear it from earshot. Frank looked at Kip. He says, we ain't here to eat French fries and drink Coke. We're here to race. What are you doing? He ripped that stuff out of his hand, stuck the radio in his hand, pointed him to the driver's stand, and was like, we got to see if, I just wrenched on this thing. We got to see if it worked. Right. And I was like, I liked Frank. He had passed a little while after, but I was like, if that doesn't sum up how I feel about going to RC race in a nutshell, that was it. I just looked at Frank and I winked and smiled. I said, I agree. I said wholeheartedly. I wasn't beating up on Kip, but I don't think that guy understood how much we got it, or we were on the same level. And not everybody's that intense with RC. I do understand that. And,
sure.
But for those who are, man, that's what I'm talking about. I want a racer. I want somebody that wants to dig. You want to win every race. That's great, but at least to try.
Yep.
It doesn't just roll over into a coffee club.
Yeah.
And if you enjoy it that way too, that's fine. That's your prerogative. That's why I stay grumpy at my own pit mat, and that's part of it's part of knowing me. You either figure that out or you just don't bother with me. But either one's fine.
Right. Right.
But yeah, so we'll go back to the '90s now, because I love that Frank story, and I felt that
that's good.
That says who I am, pretty accurately, or how I feel about RC racing. When people say it's a hobby, I agree, it's a hobby. It's a sport too. It's a competitive game. That's where we're at with it.
Yep.
But nope. So back in the history lesson, the '90s was, the pan car was kind of winding down, and I had started college, and the Trinity Spec series. I met a bunch of guys that's where I first started meeting dirt oval guys.
Okay.
And, Brian Burkhart. Now there's two of them in the area, not Maryland Berkey, but Pennsylvania Burkhart.
Okay.
One that's known as BBG. So he says to me, ugh, because if you know him, he goes, you want to come run my car, Warnersville? And what am I going to say? you threaten me with a good time, sure.
Right.
Like you say you got a car, and I have to show up, and I don't know where Wernersville is at the time. He could be staying 3 hours away, and I just went, yep.
Yep, sure.
So yeah, so Wednesday night, bogeying out of college class as early as I can because I got a 2-hour drive in front of me. Because we're going to go race on a Wednesday night somewhere,
right?
And that was my first taste of dirt. It all come from Berkey, and then Crandall's was in the wintertime, so the outdoor track shut down, and he's like, well, what are you doing next weekend? I don't know. I run my pan car because I never stopped running the pan car.
Yeah.
And you got to come to Crandall's. So I'm sure somebody out there's laughing right now because that could be a whole nother hour right there. But
yeah.
So Berkey brings me into Crandall's, and that started the whole my whole dirt oval beginnings and love, and actually that's where the 4 comes from, because the car Berkey ran. He tells it differently today, and I don't know if he's just busting my stones or not, but
right.
he had a 16 car and a 4 car, and he would lend me the 4 car.
Okay.
And then conveniently the body would stay the same, but maybe the car would be different next week depending on how I ran. If you get my drift. But when I got to Crandall's, he set me down with the 4 car, and he goes, "You can run this one." Okay, so I ran it, and I ran that car, and I still got it. He told me I could have it, but not, don't ever sell it. So
nice.
I still have it. But that's where I started running the 4, and then it was a couple of years ago. We got in a conversation, and he said, "Well, you stole my number." And I said, "Well, I think after 25 years, I said maybe I can apply for a trademark on this thing."
Yeah.
Yeah. And he said, "No." He said, and then he tried to give me the story. I'm like, "Berkey, you lent me the car. You literally put it in my hand."
Right.
I said, "I thought you chose a 16." So I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be at 30 years into this. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be running a 4 or 16, but I think I'll just keep it consistent like I have.
Yeah.
But so that was, so Crandall's was the first open wheel races, and I guess that'll help bring the segues into Custom Works and Tony Stort and all. So
right.
This was 95-ish. I forget which year. Rob Cutman's definitely better on remembering the accuracy on history dates like this. But bottom line was, Tony was just starting, I think, IRL.
Okay.
Like, he was just coming off of open wheel stuff, and they were doing the open wheel race at Crandall's.
Right.
And so he was coming there each December, and that's how I had met him. And I never really chatted with Rob much. I always ended up chatting, with Tony via some of the guys I knew from Delaware that were around there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how that relationship began. When, it was some years later, like I think 2002 roughly, when Brian and Jerry Blandgraf, who owned Custom Works, decided, that they couldn't foster one. They needed they had 2 businesses running at the time, Custom Works, which, basically went fallow.
Right.
And then the leather upholstery business that they do for street rods
mm-hmm.
was really putting the groceries on the table.
Sure.
And they were about ready to let Custom Works, go to nothing. It had gone pretty much to nothing. They were willing to just shut the business down.
Right.
And at this point in time, it wasn't Tony who was, sleeping on couches. It was Tony with cup money. So it was, basically the whole deal that got worked out with Brian and Jerry was Tony wanted to buy it from him, provided he could get somebody, have somebody, do the business, like, bring it back.
Yeah.
Actually apply themselves to it. So in Tony's mind, obviously it was Rob and myself. So, that puts us into, like, I think it was 2004 when I moved down. I think it was the open wheel of 2002, because that was November. And then 2003 was like the year that it moved.
Okay.
So 2003 was when Rob moved everything from California here to North Carolina. And then I didn't come into the picture. Maybe I might have an extra year in there, but bottom line, around 2004, I think I'm doing good for testifying.
Yeah.
But so that's the whole deal there was, I'd worked for a construction company since the time I was 16, pretty much full time. So for my sophomore year in high school, all through college, and open wheel. Tony tells me what's going on, and I'd already drawn a pan car at the time. I was, I didn't know what to do with it. I was hoping Trinity would pick it up because their car at the time was so antiquated.
Right.
And he basically gave me the gist, and he's like, "We want to go to the Snowbirds, and what can you do?" I'm like, "Well, what you can do is you can give me some money, and we'll get some carbon and some aluminum cut out." He's like, "Well, who can cut the aluminum?"
All right.
And I was like, "I got all that handled. I just need money. Like I knew who does all the work, and that's not a problem."
Mm-hmm.
And that guy still cuts Custom Works parts today.
Mm.
So it was literally a turnkey effort. It was, boom, here's a credit card number, go get what you need. Made 12 pan cars and went to the Snowbirds. It was 6-stall mod was the class at the time. Frank Palomita come down. Tommy Smith ran it. Rob had run it, and I'm all but certain. I know Tommy. I would think Tommy was in the A as well, but it was me, Frank. I think it was me, Frank, and Tommy in the A. Frank ended up winning right out of the bag. I mean, we don't have a car. We don't have a car together in a kit form. We just have what was considered a prototype.
Right.
And we go out there and in the big class, the big race. So that started a very long 2 weeks in which I left. I drove down from Pennsylvania with how did this go again? Maybe make sure I don't get this crossed up. Yeah, I drove down from PA. Was it that year? You have to bear with me for 1 minute while I get my squeaky wheel of memory going.
You're good.
Because I guess I'm getting into another story. What year was it? Let's see, because the story is pretty good.
Okay.
No, that was the year previous. Phil and I drove back and forth. Yeah. So I think it might have been this year, that year. Was it the Frank year? No. The bottom line is, to give you an idea where Tony was at the time, Phil Marabella and I were practicing at Limerick. Literally the Saturday before the Monday, we would have to leave for the Snowbirds. And so Tony comes in with Rob into the RC track on a Saturday night in PA.
Okay.
And he's like, what's going on? Aren't you guys going to the Birds? We're like, yep. He's like, what do you, I thought you'd already be down there. Like, pretty much. So I said, we're here because we're struggling.
Right.
And I said, we need to get our, stuff in a line before we go down there. So he's like, huh. So he hung out for the night, and then he's like, well, when are you leaving? What's the whole, spiel? And told him what our schedule was. And he's like, look, I'm going to be there Monday night. He says, if you don't mind getting sidetracked, he says, you want to fly down with me? He says, but we got to spend a day in Charlotte. So I'm like, let's see. Drive or fly? We had to get into the component of private plane and Tony, and because now it's Tony Stewart. It ain't just Tony, that guy that's a racer that races RCs, and we see him in December.
Right.
So it was like, sure. So yeah, we came down. We left Sunday night because now you're on Tony time, and we left. We're supposed to leave at 8. We left probably at midnight. Get back to his house in Charlotte. Right, literally about 10 miles from where I live now, and stay up through the night playing video games or God knows what.
Right.
And met a couple of his roommates. That they're still friends of mine today. And so the whole deal was he had to do a Stacker 2 commercial the next day. So Phil and I went to watched that get filmed. Met the big show, and then we flew down to the Snowbirds. Now, I guess this is where the story gets good for all those RC guys out there. Is we get to the Snowbirds, everybody's loaded in, all the on-road guys and all the pits are set up, and it's the night before we start practicing, and man, we pop the trunk on the rental car, and Tony he's like, grabs my bags, and he's like, runs in the door. Like, I mean, he is all about getting in there because he wants to turn some practice laps.
Okay.
I told him, I mean, I didn't buy any jet fuel, so it's the least I could do, right? So he goes flying in there, and all he knew was we were going to pit, in the Trinity pits, in and around Jim Dieter. He knew Jim at the time.
Okay.
So he goes flying in there with my stuff, and Ernie Fie, who can be, I don't know, he can be a bit of a jackwagon.
Mm-hmm.
He knows Tony, and it was like the year previous, it was like, oh, hi, Arnie. And that was about the most I got out of him.
Okay.
Now, Tony goes by and goes, where's Arnie's pit? And now it's like, this Ernie can't do enough things and knock enough things out of the way to go, it's right here. So, guy can hate me, I don't care.
Right.
It's the truth. So, all Tony wants to do is get that battery charged and then go talk to Boylan and say, look, I want to just take a few laps. I'm jonesing.
Right.
So this is literally after he won the championship, his first championship. So
wow.
He gets in there, he runs some laps. I shook it down to make sure the thing wasn't going to be crazy, and it was decent. And he ran some laps, and man, he was appeased. And our 30 some odd hours of being awake ended in the Ramadan hotel. Because I thought, I mean, surely to God, just saw him get a check for a few $1 million. But maybe he's going to he'd have his own hotel room, or definitely a better room than where we were staying.
All right.
So we get done, and we're like, all right, we're going to get ready to crash. And he's like, cool, you got a spot for me?
Oh, my gosh.
I'm like, yeah, sure. So I'm like, I looked at Phil, and I was like, one of us will take the floor.
Mm-hmm.
We go in there, and like a Labrador, the guy just crawls up on the floor right in front of the bathroom threshold and lays flat.
Wow.
And he's like, I'm good to go. Good night. And he's out and snoring.
Good grief.
And Phil and I looked at each other and we're like, we feel like crap because, well, we didn't buy any jet fuel. And now we're not even, we didn't give the guy a chance to take a bed.
Yeah.
So the next morning, everybody gets up, does their thing. And I think Tony had to leave to get over to the cup track. And Phil just busts up laughing. I hear him in the bathroom laughing to himself. So what's that? So what's going on, Phil? And he says, have you ever stepped over a cup champion to take a leak in the middle of the night? And I went, nope, never have. He goes, I did. He said, it's for real.
Oh my gosh.
I went, yeah. I said, right. I said 5 years ago, this guy was, it's just like, how much can life change? How much can life change, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That's the difference for that guy's life. So,
yeah,
that was the whole beginning of the customer care. So it was, bottom line was, I left there. I drove back. As soon as I got home, I drove straight back to Charlotte, picked up a trailer, drove straight back to Delaware, loaded my stuff in it. My roommates that at the time were like, what are you doing? I said, oh, I'm moving. Here's rent.
Yeah.
Like, I'll square you up. I ain't leaving you hanging. But, and then drove straight back to North Carolina, and that was it. It was like, all right, what are we going to do? And, I don't know what the plan was at the time, but it was like the pan car was going to, I think in Rob's mind, going to wait to get the dirt stuff figured out first. But, well, you just won the Snowbirds.
Yeah.
Well, people are expecting a kit now.
Right.
In a hurry. So it was a quick trial by fire on, how fast can you make stuff and, make instruction manuals and, just basically service the customer. And that propelled us into the first few years. At that point in time, Jim Dieter also got, Tony had talked to Dieter obviously at that point in time and convinced him to come work for him as well. Mm-hmm. And, unknown fact, there was a stock motor that was, that Jim, he had it under development for way too long. Basically, brushless happened during the development of this motor.
Okay.
But the motor had the brushes ran on a comm, but the brushes weren't on the same path on the comm. So the whole premise there was that your comm would last twice as long. Well, that doesn't matter when brushless happens.
Right.
Now there's no comm to wear out.
Right.
So that pretty much that was the baby that never got born.
Huh.
And there's, I think Jim has the one and only sample of it. If he knows where it's at his house, that would be a miracle. I know he's moved since then,
Right.
but yeah, that pretty much took the first couple of years worth of budget, of what CustomWorks was going to do. So for those who kind of remember, it was like, what are they doing? It's a slow start, and it was, that was going to be the thing that made the bread and butter for CustomWorks, and TrueSpeed was going to be the brand, and that was going to be the big major offensive, and the car stuff, was obviously capable. Just when you look at what's a bigger piece of fruit to get and do, it was obvious that helps sustain putting dinner on Rob and I and Jim's table, and then Paul Lemieux come down and worked for a bit. So it wasn't until none of this bared any fruit and brushless happened that redirection occurred. So Jim and Paul were gone, and it was just me and Rob until up until 15. So after that ended, that's when the first Outlaw kit became available, and that somewhere in the middle of that story, somewhere between an open wheel and that part of the story, Nathan Dean's in part of the mix, and just in terms of people that are listening right now and going,
yeah.
Because I think when it comes to racing, and especially for the Midwest guys, the guys are that aren't foam tire, they see Nathan, they probably automatically assume I'm probably not too far behind, but
right.
I feel like I owe the world a Nathan Dean story. I first met Nathan at Moni. Actually, no, met him at the open wheel, and he had won. No, I got it backwards. I met him at Moni. No, hold on, my correction. Actually, I met him in Phoenix at, I think it was Racers World or wherever Billy Fisher ran.
Okay.
But I met him there, and they had the Texas size sprint cars, and he ended up winning, and he let out a Texas woo-hoo, and there was a whole, there was a whole dirtoval.com disaster back then, even between the Texas size cars and what the normal size cars were.
Yeah.
So drama's old. It isn't something that just happened in the last couple of years. But bottom line was Nathan won there, and I didn't know who he was, and seemed like an all right guy to me. And he was from Texas. That was all I knew about a Nathan Dean.
Right.
So the next time I see him was Moni, Illinois, and this is Nitro still, and he's over there, and you could tell it's like the guy could drive good, but his car wasn't so great. And I was like, well, I saw what he had had a CustomWorks kit. He had getting rid of didn't bring his Texas size car to Moni.
Okay.
I don't know if it was allowed or not, but bottom line was he had a CustomWorks car and he needed help and looked like he was struggling. So went over there and started talking to him, and he was like, yeah, he was like, man, it's just I forget what it wouldn't do, but got him straightened up, and it's like most people. It's not a guru thing. It's just sometimes it's just plain experience. Sometimes it's just maintenance. And for Nathan at the time, he was Captain Pity Wrench. Like his wrenching abilities, like he could turn a wheel, but he couldn't turn a wrench. You know what I mean? So that was the part of his game that he needed whipped in shape. And I was like, look, guy, you got to make a diff so the wheel goes the other way when you turn it. And this bent axle, I know it's still driving all right, but the car just knows when it's ugly and it wants to be pretty. It has a spirit. So, and he took those things. He didn't, that's what I mean as a racer. He didn't take it like this guy's, arrogant. It was, this guy's trying to help me. I asked him for help, and he's not cutting any slack. He's delivering it right up the middle.
Sure.
So he took it straight up, and man, I don't know who won that race, but he ran good and was thankful, and we swapped phone numbers. And the next race he came to was the open wheel, which was a foam tire race.
Mm-hmm.
So you're taking a Texan and putting him in the middle of this is Coopers in Virginia.
Uh-huh.
And for those who don't know how out in the middle of nowhere Coopers is, I saw a nighttime space shuttle launch. And not that the space shuttle takes off from Virginia, but it's so dark out that one of the locals said, "You want to see space shuttle?" And I said, excuse me? And he said, you don't see space show. Won't be right out in a second. And I'm like, what he said was, it's going to be right outside here in a second.
Yep.
And I looked at him, and he looked sober, and he didn't look like he was strung out on drugs. So I was like, maybe he's just crazy. But I think Rob was standing there at the time, and I was like, let's follow this guy.
Right.
So we walked out of the track, we go up the hill, and I'm not kidding you. A minute after the space shuttle launched in Florida, you saw the red dot go across the. And I'm like, this is stuff you'll never ever see again. The bottom line was, back to Nathan, he's there at the racetrack. He's running foam tires. He's a fish out of water, but he's under good advisement. He's going to play it safe. He's going to just do his best, and he gets it in the A, and he ends up leading the A. He is the turtle, and Tony was the rabbit. Tony's car was good, and Tony's a good racer when he can get the rust off of him. And things were competitive at that era. Don't get me wrong, but you could come off after not racing for a year like he was doing, and have good help and a good car and run good. But Tony rode all over the back of him, and bounced it off the walls, and did everything but, and maybe got into him a couple times. And Nathan just never moved off his line. He just, if you know Nathan, man, almighty, it's so admirable how calm he can be despite the situation. And he ended up winning the main, and Tony come down, got nose to nose with him, and told him, he said, well, at least one thing, you're consistent, meaning you didn't get the hell out of the way, or you wouldn't move, or you couldn't get him off the line, which, Tony was genuinely torqued that he couldn't find a way to win the race. Mm-hmm. Which, I think that's part of the stories that, I wish I had people come to my defense is sometimes I'm frustrated I didn't win. It's not that I expected to win or wanted somebody to do something differently. It's just, you wanted it. But he didn't tell him congratulations. He didn't tell him anything. He just told him, if anything, you're consistent.
Right.
And that kind of stuck with Nathan. He laughed. He's like, thanks. He knew. He's like, I got him.
Yeah.
Because I legitimately beat that guy square up. And it meant, I think in one portion, he was, he knew he took the win away from him, and he was, torqued. Mm-hmm. He didn't allow him to win, but he knew without a shadow of a doubt that he gave him the vulnerability to say, you got me.
Yep.
You straight up, you couldn't beat me, or I couldn't beat you. So, he likes that win to this day. He brings it up. Well, it comes up in conversation in different ways every now and then.
Right.
And sometimes I'll stick him with a jab. Well, at least you're consistent, and he knows what I'm talking about. So yeah. So that puts the Nathan Dean into my life.
Yeah.
Which most of the racers know, and so I guess we went through Custom Works, and so. And 15, basically all marriages don't, go forever. It's not a goal to divorce, I don't think. But,
right.
Definitely, the dynamic had worn on all of us, and they made they being Rob, I'm going to say, mm-hmm. made the decision that it was time to get rid of me. So, they hot-shot me, and that's their prerogative, and, could it, I guess saying it outwards, like it could have been amicable. I don't dwell on it, but the simple case of the matter is the guy works there 11 years, and then you end up fighting him for his unemployment. That gets to kind of sad, because it's like also anybody that knows knows me, knows I gave my all for not only the business but for the racers, and there's no salacious story anywhere else. It's just simply wasn't working out between us, and he's sure not leaving. So I was
right. But,
to get treated like that out the door, it was pretty big letdown.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So where I'm at today is I work for to say it properly, Husqvarna. It's a 326-year-old Swedish company, mm-hmm. and somebody right now scratching the back of their head going, I've heard this name before. They make chainsaws.
Yeah.
They used to make dirt bikes.
Yep.
They used to make sewing machines, and 300 some odd years ago they made guns because Sweden figured they needed guns. They haven't used them lately.
Right.
But yeah, so their North American headquarters are here in Charlotte, and I take care of their cordless tool endeavor. So whether that's the batteries or the motors and the motor controllers, it's basically working on an RC car without a suspension arm or a shock or it being tight or loose. So
nice.
work is a lot the same and a lot different. A lot of different capacities. So that's my 30-year timeline in a blink.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a lot of information to try to pack in a short amount of time. Arnie, do you get to race at all, like other than like big events, Chili Bowl type stuff?
I've raced 3 of the last 4 weeks.
Oh, okay.
I mean, last summer I raced 6 times, I think, out in Dallas. I raced more in the Midwest last summer than I did in North Carolina.
Okay.
Mainly work. I travel quite a bit now for work. As some of the projects are, are either in Europe or in Asia. So I've got to go and, check on things or participate here or there. But, so getting in airplanes gotten even easier, than ever. So, I probably will be out to race Nathan's Way by the end of June.
Okay.
And that's one more time less than I thought I would be so far this year.
Wow, that's awesome. All right. Yeah, because I didn't know just how much chance, in North Carolina itself you had to race. So yeah, I was curious about that.
No, we've got indoor tracks, we've got outdoor tracks, all within an hour and a half.
Nice. Okay. What do you think about the overall state of the hobby right now? Are we on an upswing, holding steady?
Transition.
Okay.
Easy. It's easy right now. I mean, look at PA. You haven't seen a rubber tire there since the beginning of the 2000s. Mm-hmm. And at that point in time, it was custom work street tracks running nitro cars. And I mean, this will give you like how strong was the hobby then. I remember Newville had 70 people sign up for their Saturday race in the middle of the remnants of a hurricane.
Wow.
They flat out said when people arrived, we are not racing today, and people still signed the sheet and said, just in case. Wow. Because they knew they had lights and all 9 yards. But I remember, I think it was Mike, that one of the, that Mike and Randy had the hobby shop. They called to place their order on Monday, and they're like, we had 70 people sign up. I'm like, how? I was like, you didn't race. He goes, we told them we weren't racing. They still signed the sheet. He's like, the sheet was, people literally just stood in the hobby shop. I said, with the hurricane, basically the rain coming. He's like, yeah. He said, couldn't tell them no. All right. But I mean, they average like a turnout. I think they average like 120, 130 on 3 classes. Wow. So that's why I signed rubber tire was strong in PA. And I'm, PA always seems to be the last area to RC wise to change. The Midwest seems to do it first. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you're seeing it. You're seeing loose dirt. You're doing it. Oh yeah. Guys are running buggy tires, and then you got Proline who, not only they I wouldn't say they stepped up by doing the prime slick, but they targeted a slide job towards dirt oval guys. Sure. Here's a very decent looking tire. It's not overly tested. The premise was, and I've heard that they released an M3 compound of it, so I guess they're kind of slipping off it a little bit, but it was supposed to only be a higher wear compound. But the bottom line is, there's service coming from the big and reputable, bread and butter company like Proline. And sure. that's only going to reinforce, that racing into, the areas where those tires work well. And I don't mean like performance. I mean, where you can roll your car, you can race your car like a bowling ball. You can roll that thing week on, week out mm-hmm. with the same set of tires, some respectable amount of wear and tear. Right. So I think definitely dirt ovals in a transition for those areas. it's they're having it now. They're looking at foam and rubber, and they're trying to make a decision. And there's these tracks and those tracks, and all the attention eventually is going to fall to one side, and it always usually falls to the side that's the more Johnny come lately.
Mm-hmm.
So once that happens and it transitions, then it becomes those who host the game, how good a steward they are of the game.
Exactly.
Do they work? They work to keep it simple or not?
Yep.
Yeah, definitely transition.
Okay. One other thing, and then we got a ton of Facebook questions to dive into, but since you've been involved so heavily in engineering cars and stuff, I've tried to think over the past modern history of what we're racing, other than like the game changer arm. Do you see anything that could really evolve the dirt oval chassis or transmissions or anything? Not counting electronics, but just the car itself. Do you see anything that could be a major like, oh wow, why didn't we think of that type deal?
I wouldn't give it up. I'm racing you right now.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
There was a Facebook question that got deleted, which was, and this brings up a good point. It's like, he goes, "What color is your favorite towel?"
Okay,
and that's kind of a up and down point for me with going racing lately. Is I know another Facebook question out there was, am I ever going to do my own cars or product? And it's like, the big answer is definitely not now. No. And it's still a maybe, but the bottom line is for the question of the towel, I found the humor in it, but there's also still a real answer. It's I'm trying things and I want credit for what I'm trying to do. That's in the same vein of the question you just asked.
Okay.
And for the things I try and struggle, no one wants to come over and look.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as the car's running good, then everybody wants to come over and look.
Sure.
And so for those reasons, the towel's on the car. The second reason the towel stays on the car is if you're coming over because you need help, the answer you need is not on my car. The answer you need, maybe, possibly, is between my eyeballs and my ears and my bald head now. And, I kind of get frustrated for guys that just look at your car and go, "Oh, that must be it." And they run back and you just see them in misery. And you're like, and you don't, it's like, you have to approach every guy you want to help. I've definitely done my fair share, but if they want help, staring at my car is not going to help yours. If anybody knows, and I've helped over the years, the first thing I'll say is, go back and get your car. I'll see it.
Right.
Because unless I know them and I know their car prep, it all falls back to that same conversation about meeting Nathan, which was, the guy can drive. There's no doubt about that. I think he's proved his point. I think there's people out there like, he can stop proving his point. But it just really was, they're the victim of their own maintenance, or maybe, and it's unfortunate, but things cost money, and it's like, I just can't afford to rebuild that right now. Okay, right. Well, maybe here's a quick way to fix it. Or you know what? I'm flush with some parts. I don't want to see it. It's like this $5 part ain't worth your $60 weekend. So here you go.
Right.
You owe me a Coke, or so that's, some people get a little sheepish. They're not looking for a handout, but that was kind of always the bro code with the Crash Cart and Custom Works, and still Custom Works today is, if you need a part and the hobby store isn't stocking things or whatever, don't be bashful to go say, look, I need this to get through the day. Do you have one?
All right.
And make a reasonable offer, square it up. Don't just have your hand out. But that was always the code there.
Yep.
But no, I think, honestly, Alfie, to answer your question accurately, I got to put one thing back in play: is the programmable speedo. It's my long-term dream has been, and it's all in there. They could write the code in a day. Is basically, if you want to slow a class down, you can't do it by restricting the motor or doing this or doing that. You got to make them lift. So you take away tire and the cars get loose. Take away battery. You can't buy a cheap battery, but you can program one. You can program that speedo to say, you know what? here's 1,500 milliamps, and we raced 5 minutes. Because guess what? You remember, we didn't have that many milliamps when we were kids.
No.
I mean, people were milliamp broke. You had to stand in line. I mean, I remember another good story about, I mean, you remember how it was to get a matched battery, and, well, so-and-so got 15 more seconds than I did. I thought I was his buddy. Yeah. But the whole point of the matter is, that's how you slow a class down off the power consumption. And when you get to the point where you can consistently dump it, maybe it's time for you to program your car up to the next class. So basically, everybody's running modified. It doesn't matter what you got in there for power. It's just, this is the 1,000 milliamp class. You got to take that 1,000 milliamps, and you got to figure out how to get 4 minutes out of it. Go.
Right.
And that brings back, for those who never raced in that age of dumping, especially oval, that was a whole layer of the game that was absolutely a riot.
Right.
It was a lot of fun. You had guys that would go like heck up front, and you knew at the 3 minute mark, man, here they come back. They don't have enough juice to make it to the end.
Yep.
And you had to pace yourself. And I think that's a lot of what gets missed today in terms of the racing is everything's so punched, so available, so penalty free. Cars don't break or anything. And that's what's groomed racers. I'll just pick Nathan. It's what's groomed racers like us over the years to work on our stuff is the penalty of doing things too hard. And I don't see anything that reinforces that. But I feel like on two sides, that reinforcement of how to play your race out, and secondly, how to execute it, well. I think it would open up some avenues, and it's not an oval thing. That's an off-road thing. That's anybody's thing.
Yep.
And secondly, there's no reason you couldn't race all three classes with one car on the same night.
Mm-hmm.
The way I turned the motor down to this. I'm running the 1,000 milliamp class and the open class tonight. I mean, that's how we can set some things up. But, that's the long-winded answer to your question.
Okay. Well, let's jump into Facebook land real quick if you got some time.
What is Facebook?
Yeah, I remember when I met you at Chili Bowl. You came up or I came up to you and we were talking, and you were like, "Yeah, I'm basically Amish," and that stuck with me because you don't do social media, so.
I look at Twitter, and the only reason I have a Facebook was so when I was dating, I didn't seem like a creeper. Because I had one girl tell me, she goes, I don't know what you're up to when you're not seeing me, which it was a big red flag.
Right.
For various other reasons. But she brought up a pretty good point, which was socially at that point in time, if you didn't join Facebook, it was like you're hiding something.
Oh,
so I
gotcha.
said, watch this. I will create an account and nothing will happen. And I've been right.
Yeah. Facebook is it has a lot of benefits and it has a lot of drawbacks. I beat that horse pretty bad last week. So
I hear of the drawbacks. I mean, I can assume the benefits, but here's a good rule of thumb, and this is something you can go back to Rob Cutman.
Mm-hmm.
But in doing the open wheel race, and you have 400 people that would sign up in a day,
mm-hmm.
and you're trying to keep everybody balanced and happy. It became necessary to have a driver's list to say, look, this stock class is not for these guys,
mm-hmm.
and that was just to say that was to make it to have a second level quality driver class that they could race themselves in.
Right.
And 6 or 7 people, mainly New York, would cry like 50 people. And I mean, to us, it felt like, well, the sky has fallen, and we, maybe we're not doing the right thing.
Right.
And then in the private inbox, he had like, I think it was like definitely better than 30, somewhere between 30 and 50 thank yous
mm-hmm.
of people that appreciated the move, but would never post openly. But really were the right people. They were they are the guys that make the party.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, well, there you go.
Oh, sure.
No matter how bad seems like it's raining on Facebook with cries and complaints and all the negativity. Underneath it all, there's a whole lot of happy going on that you just can't see. I mean, just on a gray, cloudy day, the sun's still shining above the clouds. You just got to get up there.
That's right.
And that's kind of the whole problem with Facebook. And that's one of the reasons I just don't engage to it. Secondly, I just don't find it genuine. For me, that's just me. You know, if I want to know what your kid's up to, I'll call you.
Right.
Or if you want me to know what your kid's up to, text me a picture out of the blue.
Yep.
And you know, I like quality over quantity. I'm going to make a good old man.
There you go. I think you are part Amish, maybe.
Yeah, I work with a lot of them.
Oh yeah, me too.
I've houses.
Oh yeah. They can throw them up, man.
Yes.
All right, so Chris Russ wants to know: have you fully recovered from the bullet wound from the Chili Bowl?
That is funny.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
That was hilarious.
I might be healed physically. I think emotionally, I'm still laughing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you thought it was funny on video, you should have saw it out of my eyeballs.
Oh my gosh.
So, long story short, I get to the outside of the track, and I realize like there's a very good race going on to transfer, and it's the first thing in the morning, and you know I even volunteer marshal.
Right.
And I'm like, holy crap, it's 45 seconds to go, and these guys are going after it, and I'm like, holy crap, if I don't get back in the infield and these guys wreck, and you know there's not a fair marshal, and the guy from third passes them, and you know. It just was like, I don't want this to ruin their race. Because the reason I ran across the track was to get the car that was laying in the middle of the straightaway. So the wall was a little taller than I thought. And when it caught, I got over it with my first leg. And my bottom line was, I got my head over center.
Okay.
And once I got in the middle of the straightaway, life went into slow motion. I mean, I was literally having conversations with myself as you watched me go. So I realized, like, okay, I'm off balance, and I really need to get my legs out in front of me. And I'm trying to leg it out. So once I get to about the infield line, that's where I realized I see the chair.
Yeah.
And I got so much momentum built up. I'm like, I'm going to end up on the back straight, and that's going to be even worse.
Right.
Because I'm sure of one thing while this is going on. There is a camera rolling somewhere. Not that it's on me specifically, but it will then be edited. I didn't know it was going to be edited so well. I think, thank you to Eric again.
Yeah.
But once I got right to the edge of the infield, I realized this momentum and the chair's in my way, and I thought, all right, we've got to wreck this thing. We can't end up on the back straight. We've already failed. And this conference with everything that keeps me sane, and I went, all right, everybody in agreement? We're going to wreck? Yep, we're wrecking. We want to hit the chair head first, or how do we want to slide? And I just was like, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go out with my hand because my Coke was on the other side of the chair, and I was like, I'm going to reach my hand out, grab the chair, so at least I don't run my teeth into it. And after that, I'm sure gravity will have its way. And that's what I did. I put my hand out to grab the chair so I didn't bust my head on that, and I went down. And I looked up, and Scotty just was looking at me like, Are you kidding? And I just looked at him, and I just dropped my head back down in the sand. That's the whole point of the video. I think most people laugh. It's like you see my head come up, and it just like the head drops, and I just go limp because I was like, "Yep, I just lived it."
Yeah.
And so that is the whole deal there. I'm sure next year there will be all kinds of sniper video ready, everybody ready and waiting.
Oh
and
my
the
gosh.
funny part is, I even said to Scotty, because this is the kind of stuff that goes on when you put on a big race with you guys like him. I was like, Scotty, I was like, these walls are a little tall, man. I said, I heard a few people, they didn't tell me, but I'm hearing them say they're having a hard time stepping over them. He's like, oh, we need to get where the marshals are, they stack the dirt up.
Yeah.
So you don't have to step so high over the wall. He's like, you think I need some more dirt around some areas? It's like, yes, you better. So someone's going to fall. Famous last words, right?
Yep. All right. Tim Wood wants to know, do you see dirt oval on an upswing? We pretty much already hit that one. And what can be done to sustain or better grow the hobby?
My bowling ball theory. I mean, there's two theories I think that have held true over the years, and one's the party analogy and one's the bowling analogy. The party analogy is you got to have newcomers, you got to have party animals, and you're going to have people that are the center of the party. They mill around and talk.
Mm-hmm.
And when the party animals are in the front door class, no one will ever come in that house to have fun. It's too intimidating. It's too everything.
Right.
So you gotta find a way to figure out how to host it like a party. The other reason it's like a party is, when the party animals have their way, and they're like drunks at 2 a.m. They don't know why they're drinking. They just still are.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes the party host to say, okay, it's over. Time to go home. We'll come back tomorrow. We'll do it again. And the part of the analogy that's not quite real is, how you host that party either runs the clock late or brings the clock back closer to 7 or 6 o'clock in the evening. And that's kind of always been my gauge, especially with working at Custom Works, as to what's the vibe of a track and how it's being run, or
mm-hmm.
is, what time is it at the party? The bowling ball analogy is simple. When you look at the pit and you look at what people are racing, if you just can't say, when I say to you, you want to go bowling, you assume we can go rent shoes, rent a ball, and we can go.
Mm-hmm.
And then the closer RC racing can get to that, and unfortunately it involves more rules or more structure, so be it. But the more it can be serviced into a ease of bowling type scenario, the more we're all going to do it. It doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't mean it's the absolute most cost efficient method, but it still will be cost efficient because that's part of it. If bowling was expensive, you wouldn't do it.
Right.
So it has to be. I think it's that hosting and that ease. That's what it takes, and that's what the tracks. How hard is it to grow a flower, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think of the miracle. You take a seed and you just jam it in dirt and you throw some sunlight and water on it. If you give it everything it needs, it blooms. It just does. And that's the same with RC racing. But if you don't have water, specifically water for your dirt tracks,
right,
or you don't have the sun or the nutrients or whatever, it can still grow, but it's never its full potential. And that's what I think we see a lot of times with RC tracks.
Yep.
Is there's something missing, and it's just kind of a half a bloomed flower that we're proud of, but not really going to ever attract anyone else but us crazies.
Right. And that's, that's what I've been harping on for us Northeast guys with the explosion that we've had with the Mud Boss. And it's brought in just mobs of people, which are great, but we got to be really careful on our retention rate, because now that we're a few years into the Mud Boss, it seems like we've had a terrible retention rate. And I think a lot of that falls back to the tracks and how they've been ran. I mean, it was easy to get them in the door. It's an entirely another thing to keep them.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. It's a whole different culture over in Europe and Asia. But I mean, if you watch any of the Red RC videos, and I mean, they don't have near amount the quantity of tracks that we do in the U.S. And I mean, and somebody's probably scratching their head going, "You're crazy." But it doesn't seem it. Maybe I'm not correct there. But the bottom line is, the tracks that you do see on those videos, they're immaculate. They're pride packed, and their entry fees, I guarantee you, are not $10 or $15. And it's like, I know this isn't cheap, and I know everybody's not made of money, but I mean, $20 is pretty realistic for 8 hours of entertainment from a guy that's putting on a race for you. And I mean, if you're making sure that he's, getting his time reimbursed, I mean, it's always a labor of love for the track owner. But, maybe it gives them the extra jingle to go, you know what, I want to paint the walls, or you know what, I am going to make sure the bathroom's clean every week. That's kind of the biggest key to me, is if you go to an RC track and the bathroom's clean, you can almost bet that the whole rest of the place is going to be aces.
Yep.
It's kind of like finding a good McDonald's. At Chick-fil-A, you expect the bathroom to be clean, but I mean, when you walk into the McDonald's and the bathroom's clean, you're blowing out of the water.
Yeah,
You're like, I bet they use fresh grease on these fries, you know? So yeah, that's kind of my take on that. I think, that's part of what I'd love to see RC work on, but let's just face facts. The guys that are putting the races on, and hosting tracks, races for us, or, they're working their job and they got their family, and it's whatever time and money they have spent, left at the end of the week. And,
right.
They'd surely appreciate the help. It's just, you just wish they would say, you just wish they would organize it for you.
Right.
Say, look, hey, I need a build day. Can I get, because if you get 10 people to promise, only one shows up. That's
sure.
the RC rule for help.
Yeah, no doubt.
10 to 1. 10 to 1 when you're volunteering.
Yep. All right. Wesley Call wants to know, should we race for money to make RC racing grow?
Yes and no. Simply put, for some days that money is easy, and for some days it's too much of a pain in the butt. In different areas, see it different ways, but for me, I've enjoyed money races because I watched everybody get serious, and I don't think more people took it like it was more of a challenge. And typically, I could speak of the '90s. Tech was more serious. So those were the races I liked the most because I knew I was going to get a fair race. I was going to get to see everybody roll through Tech once, and that usually was a good thing for me.
Right.
It meant somebody went home or didn't race or suddenly got slow. It's a really I don't think that's the magic bullet we're looking for.
Right.
When we can race C mains and be proud of that, and D mains, I think that's what fixes the hobby most.
Yeah.
There's no shame. There's no shame in going, hey, last week I was in the C, but I've been working for the B, or hey, I made the B 2 weeks in a row. And that, culturally, we're way different than 30 years ago. But that was the ethic, and that was the ethic in the building. When you made the A for the first time, I remember at the pit stop, it was, you had a tour of people coming to you before and after you ran that A main, telling you good job.
Right.
And it wasn't like a paraded, loudmouth. It was a sincere slap on the back and like, congrats. Like because everybody knew how hard you worked to make the A at a weekly race. And it's like, I kind of miss that eureka for some people. More or less now it's like, a first win at a regional race or something like that. And it's like those celebratory moments are too far apart. If we can't celebrate making the A on a weekly event or doing better than you did the previous week on a weekly event, then I think you're missing the whole point.
Right. Good stuff. I agree. All right. Scooter Allison wants to know, does Arnie have a go-to favorite fine-tune adjustment?
Yeah, tires.
Tires.
If it's a bucket of junk and you've tried everything and it just ain't responding, just change the tires. That's the grassroots level. Like if your tires are wore out, that's all you're going to get out of it.
Right.
Sometimes you get so frustrated that you miss the fact that your rims chunked or your wheels cracked, or because of foam tires, you've got a tear that you didn't see in the sidewall, or even guys with foam tires, they got them on feathered backwards, and it's like that's at least become common knowledge nowadays. It used to be a mystery, but man, if you see somebody with the feathers on backwards on their car and getting ready to go out there race, you basically you treat them the same as if they were going to let their kid run out in traffic. It's like,
right,
stop!
Right.
You know what you're getting ready to do. But to answer his question more seriously, it depends. There's no real go-to setup, but the tires were the first thing that comes to my mind. Obviously the toe arms, because of, how that was, going from wet to dry tracks. That was the reason it was a game changer, was you could literally adapt to the situation with the most important tuning adjustment. So,
right.
That helped then when the tracks were so different from wet and dry day to night. And now anymore, the guys that do the tracks are so good, and you kind of, and everybody's got so much knowledge now. It really is less of a surprise to have to go, whoa, I got to change my toe.
Right.
Before you run.
Jim Pullman, who were your racing heroes growing up?
Nathan had sent me questions like preemptively, like he's like, you got to prepare for this. So he's my Facebook lookout guy.
Okay.
But I had to like literally get in the visual of what was in my bedroom growing up. I was like, I hadn't forgotten, but I could write the list, but I was like, I kind of had to revisit it. But the first name that come to mind was Bob Glidden.
Okay.
My dad and I would watch drag racing, and Bob was there working with his 2 kids and his wife, and the general gist as a kid that I got was, this guy's out here racing and working. I mean, that's all he knows. That's how he makes his living, and he'd go out there and he'd win. He'd win, and then the other lane was Warren Johnson. And, I think at the time he had the GM sponsorship, but he was so much the professor, and he was probably more the me today than I was then, but I never really clicked watching Warren. It was always Bob Glidden or Warren Johnson in Pro Stock. And I just always, it was like, you knew Bob was working. And I just went, I was like, that's my guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the next racer that I tended to start to appreciate from a juvenile level was John Force. And it isn't until I was an adult, kind of really till I was looking at this question, I'm like, why did I like those guys? Mm-hmm. And the common theme I saw that Force was he was the same thing. He was second place every week. He wasn't winning nothing.
Right.
I mean, he finally, the switch flipped. But I mean, he took a lot of licks. And I was like, this guy's there, and he just told it like it was. And I'm like, he tells it wide open like it is. And I was like, I can appreciate that. That's how I grew up. That's how I was raised. And I'm like, this guy speaks to me.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I was like, racing RCs, heavily. And then that's when I started watching NASCAR, because the guys at the track were watching it. And of course you're hit with, Earnhardt. Everybody's got 3. And I was like, yeah, he races all right. I know I live against the guy. But Mark Martin.
Okay.
It was watching him, Roush was upstart. He was a digger, he was basically digging the whole time through his career. And, the sport, he really showed the sport, I think, looking back, changed the most. He went from, scraggly guy with a mustache and no physique to, corporate representable. But I mean, through it all, a guy is a wheel monster.
Oh, yeah.
I wish I could have met him. I wish I still had a chance to meet him. He was parked at his motorhome at Custom Works for a while, or his bus driver was. But I mean, it was so interesting hearing Mark Martin. Like, when you moved down here, you would hear the campfire stories of, they refer to Earnhardt as Big E around here. But then you hear those campfire stories of Mark, and it was like, Mark went to a test and he got in so-and-so's car, like he got in a so-and-so's car and 3/10 faster, and knew basically, that's like blasphemy. And if you hand somebody a radio and they just go faster by a whole crap ton,
yeah,
and then they hand it back to you and go, it's a little tight, and goes home. But I mean, that's how Mark Martin got. It's a part of how you have so much respect amongst the racers here is he did good with the Roush stuff, but you saw how he had a resurgence when he went and ran Waltrip stuff and Hendrick stuff and all that kind of honeybeeing he was doing at the end. And it's like, the guy's a wheel monster.
Oh yeah.
I don't think he got enough credit. But I mean, it was Mark, and then and Kowalski.
Oh yes.
I was like, there's another guy. Just and that's what I mean. Is literally the other day I was looking back going, everybody I gravitated towards was always somebody who had a work, was just a work monster.
Mm-hmm.
And then Allison coming in, was there in the picture too. And he just was likable. I mean, I couldn't really appreciate how good his wheel was. Like, anybody that was ever around him here in racing, and then eventually came to understand how good Earnhardt was.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that was kind of the first roots of, who I can respect for a wheel. And I mean, that's not to say there isn't a list of RC guys. I remember racing with Mike Dunnigan, and he was the kind of the first guy I ever saw put it all together. Like him and his dad took notes, and they were meticulous in the pits, and they went out on the track and they stomped their head in the ground, and they could tell you exactly what they were going to run next round. Oh, we ran a 36.02. We're going to run 36 flat next round. Right. They weren't being arrogant about it. They just knew.
Right.
And you're like, man, that's admirable. So, that's kind of where I'm at with driver inspirations.
Okay. Let's see. A lot of these we've already hit. Are you going to sell your own stuff? Okay. What was Justin Haynes wants to know? What was your aha moment that most racers have where it all comes together?
I'm very story oriented, as if the clock and the time has to say, but can't really put a major influence. I read books, I read chassis books, I read, and I'd read conflicting things, and then I would try to incorporate that somehow into my car to see if it actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it took times to come back and learn it again and again. But I mean, the aha moments that I think I can come back to are like our racing with Ricky Steef, like I was saying earlier, Downingtown. I was like, that was the first time I ever raced, and it was like, you're 2 laps off.
Mm-hmm.
Go to work. It's all in your pit, pal. Just figure out how to rearrange it.
Okay.
And then I just mentioned Mike Dunnigan. He was the kind of the next step. Like, he knew by what battery and motor he's putting in the car and what the track was, and he kind of helped me understand, like, you got to look around and go, this isn't the track we had last week. This is all you're going to get. So that's another kind of version of the aha moment. Matt Kemp and Phil Marabella racing with them at the mill. I mean, that was a uber competitive environment. There would be an A main of guys, and we'd all qualify within a second and a half of one another.
Mm.
I mean, it was. I mean, and we all had a good time together. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, we worked together tightly, me, Matt, and Phil, and it was little discoveries of, hey, I put the springs on backwards mistakenly, and I picked up a half lap out of nowhere, and it was like, huh? Well, we never thought to try that. Then it became, well, why? Why did that matter? And that's kind of where I would go, how would you say, like a graduate level deep to go, hey, it changed this on the scales. Now the car rolls this way, and at least could put some theory behind what happened. I think the last aha moment that ever really hit me was after I moved down here racing with Greg Honeycutt at Sandhills.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the guy ruled the place. He had a whole program for buying batteries, racing them a couple weeks, and then selling them off as stock packs. I mean, he did not run with fresh nickel metal.
Right.
But, so that's a Mount Olympus, right? But I remember, and he wasn't really giving, but he raced you fair and he kept it fun with you. But I remember wholeheartedly, and I've shared this story with other racers at different times, is I remember taking off in a heat race, and the car in the first corner, I was like, this car is tight. And with pan cars, there's no practice lap or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know the car you got in the first 2 corners. And as soon as I hit the first 2 corners, I went, oh my God. And I sat there and I talked to myself for 3 laps and went, why am I going to run this battery out? Why am I going to burn this common brushes down? I might as well pull it,
right,
fix the car, do a timed run and practice so I can learn something. And that's exactly what I was telling myself. And then on the 4th lap, I basically said, forget it.
right.
I'm just going to run the pack out because the car is so tight. And it was the first time I made run time at Sandhills, made all 4 minutes. So I mean, it was like, it was such a defeating feeling to succeed when you were willing to abandon it. You were so certain that this was failure. This was 4 minutes of failure in your face. And you just, through frustration, was like, I'll just run the pack out, and then succeeded.
Right.
So I've kind of shared that with people different times ago. That was a big moment, because what it told me was, you don't know it all. I didn't think I knew it all, but it made me have to stand back and go, man, there's sometimes you just gotta let it happen.
Right.
And then look and see what you can learn from it. And that's kind of always been my MO is, if we're not going to win, and we're not going to find a challenge in it, we better learn something.
For sure.
I've always had that, Glidden, Forrest, Mark Martin, Kowicki type ethic in that sense that,
right.
It's one thing to race hard, but you got to learn something too.
For sure, man. All right. Sonny Brown, pre-race tacos, bueno or no bueno?
No bueno. No bueno.
All right.
The answer is definitely no bueno.
All right. Nathan Dean, waves or no waves when you sleep?
He is waves.
Okay.
That is. I've never seen a panic attack, and if anybody ever believes that, you look at Nathan and think you have a panic attack, the man had a panic attack because Bob Light snores like no other.
Oh wow!
And we didn't know this. The bottom line was Bob Light when I would sleep through it. I was fine, and Nathan lost his skittle. Man, he was like, I need waves because the hotel TV had like an ambient noise channel. And he's like, I need waves right now. And I'm like, what are you talking? Like, he's waking me up in the middle of the night, like, to tell me this. And I was like, guys, like, maybe, Frank Denny also was in the other room. But he abandoned the hotel room to get away from his snoring and then came back in and said, if you're going to stay, wear these. And he gave me his headset with his iPad with the ambient noise of like fire burning.
Okay.
And I mean, it was serious as a heart attack. like as if it was an oxygen mask.
Yeah.
And on a plane. And I said, okay, Nathan. And he's like, all right, good night. And he left. He went into the other hotel room where Frank was staying, and Frank was basically like, what's going on?
Yeah.
He just comes barging in the middle of the night. So Frank has the other half of the story, but he do not interrupt Nathan's sleep. That guy, he definitely needs his sleep.
Okay. Good to know.
So waves. Gotta have waves.
All right, waves it is. And on a serious question, what is the one race you would love to win but have not?
Ooh. I really, you know what? They all matter.
Yeah.
I mean, next week, I would like to win next week. It doesn't matter if it's the open wheel or the Chili Bowl or February Freeze or the Winter Blast or the Mega Track Appreciation Race. I mean, I go to them all because I would like to win. I'm trying to win. I mean, that's one thing I think anyone could say about me is you're never got a layup effort out of me.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been there to win. And if I haven't been there to win, you definitely know I was there just to practice. I mean, that's the one good thing you get from me is that. What's the one thing I don't appreciate is when I become someone's stopwatch. And, basically driving up your rear end in practice to see if their car is any good.
Right.
But yeah, I don't want to be cliche and say the next race, but I whatever the next good race is, I always appreciate winning them. They all feel different.
Okay.
I don't know how else to say it.
Okay. Fair enough. John Bolton has a question, and I think that question is actually directed towards Tim and I. And since Tim is off racing tonight, we will save that and hit that next week.
No. Bring it. What do you got?
Well, okay, so we did a show last week that was about staying off Facebook. And then there was a guy named Aaron Waldron from Live RC that wrote a story basically saying we should drop a lot of racer etiquette things, such as giving the position back if you got it unfairly and a bunch of other stuff. And Tim and I ripped the article apart because it was crap. And well, come to find out, this guy Aaron had been running a website anonymously that made fun of RC off-road guys. And when Live RC found out about it, they fired him. And so he was wanting to know what the opinion of him being fired was. And I think it's...
Go
ahead.
Yeah, my opinion is he's not helping anything. So in a general sense, I mean, it's only funny if I get asked a Facebook question for the guy that's never on Facebook.
Oh.
But I mean, for John out there, like Nathan preempted me on this question, and like it propelled me on this. I was like, I've got to log in and see what he's talking about.
Okay.
And John, I logged in. If this John's out there listening, I hope he is. I log in, so I realized I ain't logged into Facebook in years. I think when I was married, I gave my wife the password so she could post something. It might be the last post, but that was 5 years ago. This anniversary's coming. But anyhow, and I find an Artie Fie, not Arnie Fie, but Artie Fie.
Oh.
And this guy is like the second coming of Vin Diesel. And then I look and it says that we share friends, Facebook friends. And I look at the Facebook friends and I go, these are RC guys. And I realize this guy races RC. And I'm just like, I was like, I don't need, this is another reason why I don't need Facebook. Is this guy my illegitimate brother? I mean, I might see a resemblance. I mean, I definitely am never going to disagree with the guy because, I mean, I'm sure of at least one thing. If he hits you, it's going to hurt. And I'm pretty sure he's in good shape, so he's never going to stop hitting you either. He's just going to continue. Whatever he thinks, I probably agree with.
There you go.
But, yeah, so that's been my Facebook experience. And I got to say, man, no, I'm running from it. Whatever. Facebook bad. Run.
Yeah. John, my take on it, Aaron Waldron, I feel bad in one sense in that guy's whole career has been RC and media coverage of RC, and he's been blacklisted. He'll probably never work anything RC related in his life. That's unfortunate. But he got everything he was coming, because what he and the other guys that were running Dead RC were doing was absolutely vile. And I'm glad they figured out who it was. I'm glad he lost his job. We don't need websites that are making fun of RC racers who are struggling so much that they're going on Twitter and posting very depressing things that almost sound like they're going to commit suicide, and people want to go and poke fun at that. So yeah, karma. He got it.
I mean, I don't disagree with you whatsoever. I just see it. I mean, here's the other side of it. Whatever's right for his life is happening.
Yep.
And not that this is something that any of us needed or needed. You know, I don't know what it is. I mean, that's just be point blank.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't good. And on the flip side of it is he'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And the racing will be fine, provided that people take a lesson from what that was there was the most egregious example of the general negativity that just gets posted all the time.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to see RC better than what it is, don't do that.
Right.
Because what he taught you was, if I do it at a level, or he does it at a level that's above everyone's heads, then we finally can agree that we don't need it.
Yep.
And that's pretty much what Aaron showed us is, hey, we're all, you know, maybe we're all doing the same thing at different levels.
Right.
And that's and that's to really, really dig deep and find a kind of a BSy way to put a positive spin on it. But he'll land. I don't know who the cat is. I hope he finds happy in his life, and what'll be will be.
Right.
But here's always been my rule of thumb. Wherever we log in the chat, the first rule should be, if you haven't made a transponder go boop in the last 4 weeks or 5 weeks, you get immediately restricted on how much you can post. that should be the tie. I mean, and then Live RC should be able to work this out even more so now.
Yeah, right.
If your transponder don't count enough, you lose posting privileges.
There you go.
So only those who truly are racing can post. And I would definitely have I wish we could go back and account for the last 30 years. I would definitely have I'd have a good word space allocated.
Yeah, you'd have a storehouse. All right. Let's see. Another question about, are you selling things? Ronnie Chapman would like to hear his version of the story of the first year Nathan and I went to Open Wheel.
Oh, well, yeah, that was the story.
Okay.
He was slowing in the way. At least he was consistent. So yeah, we gave Ronnie the cliff notes of that one.
Okay. All right.
It ended a little awkwardly. I remember Nathan left his trophy with a guy that I knew. The story goes, the guy lent Nathan a motor for the main, and when Nathan had to leave, he let the guy have his trophy to take home to ship to Nathan. Well, this guy turned it into, I'm going to keep the trophy because you won the race with my motor. I mean, Nathan gave the guy his motor back.
Wow.
So Nathan's like he's all about this open wheel trophy, and he's like, your buddy isn't giving it up. I'm like, do what? And he's like, he feels like it's as much his because he really talked me into borrowing his motor. And I'm like, oh my God. So yeah, I remember we had a broker, like a hostage situation there to get his trophy to him. But yeah, it was a bit awkward.
Yeah.
For Florida racers, you might know who I'm talking about.
There you go. All right. My buddy J-Rod wants to know, who was the one person you learned from that shaped you into the chassis guru you are today?
Ew. Nope. I mean, I think I go back to that whole story of, it was about reading and then racing with different people in different eras. Right. That it all came, piecemeal. Mm-hmm. I would love to say that there was, somebody that really just grabbed me under the wing and gave me a lot. And there's been a lot of people that have given me a lot, mm-hmm. but I can't discredit the quantity by saying one stands out more than the other. They all came into my life for different reasons at different times.
Right. All right. Last question. April Bartles. Who gave you your first dirt car?
No, BBG. Right. I mean, other than my dad hooking me up here or there.
Right.
But I mean, first it's got to be BBG because he let me borrow the dirt car to go race on a Wednesday night, and then Kranzel's. I mean, I didn't know it. It was a weird feeling for me to not own my RC car. He let me take it home and work on it and keep it up, but it was foreign to me to not have it as my own. But he really, made me understand that it was mine to use, and it was my car of his. Very giving and welcoming, and I don't think he realizes how much he ruined my life with that thing. No, okay. But no, I mean, you look at it. Think about it. BBG didn't want to lend me if BBG wasn't willing to lend me a dirt car, I might have built one.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
I might have come and raced, I mean, that's kind of the whole, the whole wonder of life is why do, friends come and go. It doesn't mean when they're not around, they're not your friends.
Right.
It just means you haven't seen it in a while. It doesn't take away. I like to think it doesn't take away. It's fortunate that those of us in RC have so many different friends in different towns, and now with we don't have to count minutes on our cell phone anymore. And we have, of course, we have Facebook, but
Yeah.
But I mean, to go back into the '90s and go, hey, this guy was like, here, you can race my car. I want to see you race with us more often, and to look what avenues and where it put me in Charlotte, North Carolina. Ultimately, I mean, you can draw so many segues, and I just I can get kind of retrospective and go, that's the kind of stuff that happens with RC that you just don't understand, what you're doing. I mean, I can think of a racer right now that I hear is moving from California to Texas, and it's like, he was telling me like, yeah, I talked to a guy at the track. He said he might be able to, dial me in on a decent job, and sounds good. I mean, I hope it works out for him, and I'm sure whatever's the best will work out for him. But
right.
It's like only in RC, right?
Yeah. How about it? It's a crazy, crazy small community.
I can think of two things about RC that make me laugh. Was one when I was dating here in Charlotte, and I was trying to explain why I wasn't homeless and somehow made a living from RC racing. and the girl said, how long have you done this? And I think at the time it was like 23 years or whatever. So I've been doing it like 23, 24 years. And she looked me square in the eye. She goes, you can retire in a few years? And I mean, she had a whole nother plan when she said that. And I went,
wow.
We are done.
Wow.
But the other thing with RC is, I mean, when you look, if you're at a run of the mill job, and there's nothing wrong with it, but if you're at your basic job and you look around with the people you're working with or people that are your customers and realize they can't say that they have friends in so many cities like RC racers can.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about that. You could literally miss an airplane ride on your way to a vacation, get stranded in somewhere overnight, and go, I know somebody in this town, and most likely they'd let you sleep on their couch.
Absolutely.
If you needed it.
Yep.
And it's like, that's a pretty cool thing about RC.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, we just had a baby, and I had people from Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Iowa, California, Georgia. I mean, all over the U.S. People sending me messages and phone calls and text messages of just, congratulations, how you guys doing? And then, it was my RC family, reaching out, and then all the like benefit races that are going on, and it's just really cool. It's good stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like I'm going to be a little self-serving here for a minute. It's like, for those who only see me with my head down on my pit, they're probably thinking, who's the Jekyll and Hyde guy on the radio podcast right now? He sounds thoughtful or caring, or, he actually cares about other things than his car going fast. And it's like, that's true. That's part of the, here's a true story. Guy and his wife that I knew from racing in PA, they moved down to North Carolina, and his wife told me after a year and a half of living here. So I realized I've known them for 15 years.
Mm.
We were at dinner together, and she looked up from her plate and goes, you're really not an a-hole. And I looked at her, and I just said, well, you've only hung out with me at the track.
Right.
I mean, just simply put, I mean, I get it. And she just laughed, and she goes, yeah, I guess so. And I went, yeah, I'm more fun at dinner.
Right.
So, but that is me. I mean, right, wrong, and different. That is the. I wish I was more Nathan at the track, or more this guy or more that guy. And I've tried it. It doesn't feel normal to me. And I just, I guess the long story short is I try to meter that and not let my me affect anyone else. But I'm not always successful with that. But
right.
That's people, right? There's all types, and I'm definitely people. people too.
Yeah, I mean, but that's what gives you your drive, and I mean, we can look in the off-road world and look at guys like Mayfield, and they're there to work, they're there to win, and nothing wrong with it.
That's the one thing I wish I could see more for the videos that exist. Like, I love some Red RC videos of on-road in Europe and Asia.
Mm-hmm.
And when I can't get enough of the on-road stuff, I'll end up watching off-road videos. But I can watch the races. I can watch the racing. I can kind of pick apart attitudes in driving. But I wish we could see more of, I don't necessarily need to hear them talk about fluff. So I need to hear them talk. I would rather hear them talk about racing, and they do a lot of good job with that with Red RC. Like they come up and they treat it like it's a race and go, "Hey, you're P3 in round 2. Are you on your way up or on your way down? You know what? Last round I tried this toe block and it just I'm struggling, and it was just a lot of real honest racing. But it was those stories that used to read in Car Action and things like that used to. I would sit there and go, "Hey, he's trying this," and it was those relatable, in the heat of the battle interviews that you would get in a magazine form. That I go, "Oh man, they're working a lot with their kick-up on their suspension. So then the next time I race, I'm messing with that." So I guess that's kind of a tie-in. Like I would love to see. I'd like to understand more about the mentality, get to know the racers a little bit better. I feel like, there is no doubt for the guys I work with now, they know nothing of RC.
Mm-hmm.
And I show them some of the videos that are posted online, and for the guys that don't know nothing about racing, they think it's cool. I've got 2 guys at my work that used to work in F1,
mm-hmm.
and they see the races, and they appreciate, regardless of the on-road, but they appreciate the quality of the racing that we have. And I mean, when you look at what the Mayfields and those guys in the off-road world do, and the on-road guys in Europe, and you watch a 5-minute race, there's nothing in all of racing. There is nothing better. And we should appreciate it more than anybody. RC racers realize how close they are. But for a real car guy to look at that, they're just blown away. They're like, "You guys are doing this with a remote?"
Right.
And you're like, "Oh yeah." And they look at you. And the next question is like, "Can you tell if it's tight or loose?" And you're like, you look at them like they're nuts. You're like, "Yeah." Well, why is it that's so intrinsically true that your car's tight or loose to the radio? You feel it. You don't see it. You say you feel it. There's not anybody out there that says, "I see it."
Right.
I see my cars. They go, "I feel it."
Yep.
And when you look at it and go, how does this stuff not turn, viral? Well, I think real simply, there's so many different things to be stimulated by today. But if you took the quality of the video we have today and go back 25 years, this would be.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. I've been on a kick of going back and watching a lot of the off-road worlds that like Masami won and stuff, and because anyway, I'll save the long story. But I've gone back and watched a lot of the 80s and early 90s off-road worlds, and the quality was just abysmal. I'm thankful they exist, but if we'd have had the coverage and the technology today for video, oh my gosh, you would have, you thought it exploded back then, it would have been sky's the limit the way RC would have taken off.
And not only that, but think about, let's just draw a mashup of Facebook at the Worlds when they showed up with 2.2 wheels. The whole off-road world was on a 2-inch wheel, and 2.2s come out of the bag.
Right.
And it's like, and crush them. I think it was Masami, but wasn't even close.
Right.
And it's like, think about if that happened today, how the river of tears on Facebook that would be flowing. How could they do that? Blah, 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 blah. And then the other side can't be, the flag, everybody with their flag waving. It would be unprecedented.
Oh.
And I mean, but that's what you saw in those worlds today. And now nobody hurts for a battery or motor. It's all about development. Like, how much did you learn to engage the speedo and the motor you got? You can almost quite a bit of amount of stuff runs good.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a Easter egg hunt for the next new thing and going, well, the 1700s, they were the first one to have them and they brought them to the world.
Right.
That's how it used to go down. Now it's impressive.
Yep.
That's what I hope Dirt Oval looks like, especially on those big stages that, some of the races that guys put on. I guess my hope for Dirt Oval is that for the off-road guys out there and the on-road guys in Europe or Asia, that they see Dirt Oval racing and go, that they can put that right next to what they do as equally an equal accomplishment.
Right.
Because it truly is.
It
was funny watching on-road guys and snowbirds go, I'm going to race oval and clean house. and I mean, couldn't get the car around the track.
Right.
It's like, are you kidding me?
Right.
I never said I could drive your car around the track, but you told me you're going to drive mine and you can't even get it back.
Right.
But I mean, I that's my hope for Dirt Oval, is that it finds a transition and a stability to be approachable and appreciated like you can do these talent laden off-road and on-road events.
Right. Time will tell. Well, Arnie, I think we're going to wrap this up before I turn into a pumpkin, because I got an early morning tomorrow. You probably do as well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so before we run, is there anybody you need to thank or shout outs to?
I better say my wife, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, I mean, no kidding there, but, we met each other late in life and, late in life, but I mean, in our late 30s.
Right.
And, we all put a lot into this hobby, and, I've seen a lot of marriages end over the years over not finding balance between time with your RC car, your RC friends, and your family. But it's family in general, and especially wives that when they understand, like, that's part of who you are, and they can I don't know, love you through it or love you because of it or whatnot. But I can't say if she was just involved with something else that I would be as near as supportive.
Right.
So I definitely got to say I dig that. That's part of the reason we're here together.
Mm-hmm.
I think as far as genuineness out there, it's all those people I've helped over the years that I told you, you owe me a Coke. That still stands.
Right.
I still appreciate a random Coke every now and then. For all those people I've never met or wish, I sure would like to see you one day and get to race with those people. Don't let my work ethic and maybe tenacity at my pit towel, ward you off from saying hello. I mean, that's kind of a one-way comment to go, hey, well, you can come over and say hi too. And occasionally I do, but maybe that's part of what I need to work on.
Right.
Going out and say hi. No, I think that's where I'm at with my thank yous. Is definitely that person and the the close circle of friends I've got through the hobby that that I would say know the real me.
Right.
On both sides of it, they don't know me just as a racer. Or they've cared to know both me's, I guess, is the thing. So
right.
Thank you to those people.
Cool. Well, Arnie, I gotta say, man, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. I feel like we're probably just scratched the surface on a lot of that stuff. So hopefully someday.
Well, Alfie, from someone who's not on Facebook and hasn't heard a blog and actually has never listened to any blog ever, I've heard nothing but great things and great vibes and stories and experiences with your podcast. So when you asked me, I was honored, and I hope that this gives people out there some enjoyment or at least some new way to make fun of me.
No, it's. I mean, I think things like this are great. That because all of us in some capacity, usually at a race, are focused on something. We're in our own particular zone, and so we don't get to spend a lot of time and take down that wall between the race and the racer. And so that's one thing this podcast does, is help take that down. And so it's good, and it's a lot of fun.
And it's like you at Chili Bowl.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, you need a hand? I could use one. Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, whenever you're ready, you just bring your car over. And you had a good time walking around and checking things out and enjoying the race at your pace.
Yep. And
I wondered when you come over. You eventually did, and it was great to get to know you there and help you some. And it's, believe it or not, it's like, I guess some of those thank yous. It goes back to that question earlier of who have you learned the most off of? Well, I've learned a lot off of helping people too.
Right.
I mean, you got to realize some weekends I'm at the track, I might be racing 20 cars if you think about the number of people I'm helping.
Right.
And then what's even funnier is when I'm not at a race, and I mean, I've specifically been in China and texting people in my morning at their night race, and they're like, yeah, it's this, it's that, what should I do? And I'm living vicariously through
right.
Dave Bartle, Nathan, and somebody else, and whoever I'm traveling with work is like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm racing in Texas, PA, and North Carolina right now. So,
right.
Only with RC, right?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. All right, guys and girls, as always, it's a pleasure. We just thank everybody for listening, and we will be back soon. That's a wrap.